Welcome to the Food Startups Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Food Startups Podcast. This is episode number 13, big 13. And I'm here with my man Matt down in lukewarm Bogota.
Yeah, man, it's lukewarm. I just moved into my new pad, got an amazing view. The sun is coming in. Things are good.
Dude, that's great. It's good to hear, and I want to ask you a little bit about your apartment in a sec, but I just want to say where I'm coming in from. I'm up in New York. I'm on a visit up in New York for the first time in about 8 months, man, and right now the snow is coming down super fast. It's a Thursday morning, and there's this huge storm that everyone's been hearing about, so I'll be dating myself as far as when this goes up, but man, it's like it's just horrible. It's coming down so fast that like you can't go out. It's like mounting up at like 2 inches every like 10 minutes. So lukewarm Bogota usually looks like a pretty mediocre option for a vacation. But I'd love to go down there and just rent out a hotel room for 2 days and chill.
Sounds good. Yeah. I'm actually also drinking Arawak, which is a Colombian brand of organic coffee, and I have to say I really, really like it. I'll definitely bring some down to next week's recording session in Medellin.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be great. Is it, and what region? Because I know Colombian coffee is famous, but what region do you know, or does it say what's the brand about?
I think it's from Cundinamarca. I have the bag over there, but I'm connected to my laptop. I'm recording, so I can't check it, but I'll double check. I know they have different, they have an organic line, they have a non-organic line, and I'm pretty sure this comes from Cundinamarca.
Cool. Yeah, we were just talking to you listeners. We were just talking about coffee before because of just how, well, you know, the coffee industry is kind of crazy right now in the sense that the specialty markets have grown so much, and organic is such a buzzword in coffee. But organic coffee is really hard to produce. It's hard to produce simply because of the fact that you want to grow at really, really high altitudes to prevent diseases and infestations, and just a combination of finding the right climate at high altitudes that yields a decent production that actually makes it to market is just it's hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, and I guess we can kind of segue this into our podcast today, which is finding a niche, or is it niche? I don't know. Niche. Niche. In Spanish, it's nicho. But like coffee is a really interesting niche because, you know, people look at that and like it's very romantic. It's like, I want to have a coffee farm. I want to launch a coffee brand. And some people do have success with coffee, but it's really, really difficult. And it's a very, very mature market, and it's tough to get into. And coffee is a niche. I mean, there's niches within coffee, right? You know, organic coffee, green coffee, right? Today, we want to go into how you guys can find a niche to get started for your food business.
Definitely. Yeah, and on that point, I know, really quick, coffee is a bit about coffee for me. Coffee is really complicated, I think. It's complicated because you said it's a mature market, so you don't ever know so I think it's hard to get some success. That being said, I got a buddy in Medellin who's working on some organic coffee and exporting organic coffee right now. So down the line, would love to have him on the show so he can share some of his trials and tribulations. Because coffee is fascinating, man. I mean, you look at the prices of coffee right now, it's like $1 and something a pound for coffee. And then you go to a specialty store and you see coffee for $25 a pound for special coffee. So there's some things going on there, and a lot of people are passionate about it. I'm passionate about coffee as well. Now, yeah, finding a niche, man, this is hugely important. Like, it's hugely important, but I want to also say that my immediate reaction is like, finding a niche, man. It sounds like you're trying to engineer this like location-independent passive income business that a lot of our friends, a lot of folks that come and visit Medellin or stay in Medellin for a while, a lot of these guys are kind of internet entrepreneurs. So what does finding a niche have to do with the industry that we're in?
So I think that finding a niche, at least in the weird internet marketing, quote unquote, digital nomad space, is kind of finding just some random type of product that you can write about, rank in Google, sell a product for that's very, very, very specialized, and you can kind of dominate the space. And that's partially true for what we're talking about. Niche for the food industry is finding something that's unique or finding a competitive advantage to a very particular industry. Because if you just want to say, I want to work with organic food, well, that's great, but that's going to be very, very, very tough. Like Whole Foods, they work with pretty much organic foods. But that's a huge, huge company. And we think it's usually better to narrow yourself down to one specific industry to get some growth there and get some press and get some sales in that one particular thing and do that thing really well.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of, I guess I was kind of just BSing around a little bit when I asked, like, what is that? Is that just for, internet marketers or internet entrepreneurs? No disrespect to them. I mean, in terms of mentioning that in that context as well. But I think I've read that, just one aside, I'm a big fan of Charlie Munger, and he talks about the fact that he's Warren Buffett's partner, and he believes in heuristics and looking at the way things work on a level. Actually, I won't even explain it, but he says that niches or niches, they are fundamentally viable. If you find a niche in something, it becomes a more viable business if you're able to appeal to a very specific type of customer, because you can't mess with the big companies. You don't mess with big companies when you do that, and you can win on developing a brand and actually having some leeway to do things that other big companies don't want to target. So an example actually comes to mind is the Sam the Banana Man, that the one of the guys who Matt, what is the name of Sam the Banana Man? Do you know?
Yeah, Samuel Zamuri, and the book about him is called The Fish Who Ate the Whale.
Oh yeah, amazing book, incredible book. Just about this Eastern European immigrant who on the shores of the Gulf Coast, he started to work in the banana trade back in the early 1900s, and he decided to specialize in a type of banana actually that nobody else wanted to work with. They're actually bananas that were called ripes because of the fact that they were expiring in just a few days. The big banana companies didn't want to have a capacity to actually deal with them, didn't develop a capacity to deal with them. He found a way to basically build a multi-million dollar business by actually buying up and scooping all of the ripe bananas that have a shelf life of 3-4 days, and then getting them out to his distribution as soon as possible. And so he specialized in that because nobody else wanted it, which is what a niche is in some ways. Find something no one else is really, really working on, and then become an expert in some ways. And so, thanks for your patience on that. How does that apply to food, Matt? Like, what's an example of some other niches in the manufacturing sector that you're familiar with, or that are good examples that you think of?
I'd say a niche, in the food industry could be certain types of machinery. Right? Mm-hmm. Ways to maybe spray dry food or freeze dry food.
Freeze dry food is a great example. Great example.
And let's see what else. Creating your own brand of a product that usually goes as a commodity, maybe quinoa. A lot of times it's sold as commodity, but you can make your own brand of quinoa, as we've talked about a few times already on this podcast. And more than anything, Danny, I think that, we talked about coffee at the beginning, and it's like, we talked about coffee being kind of a romantic idea. It may or may not work, but a lot of times the niche that you get into, the best ones are the ones that are not so common, not so talked about, maybe not as sexy or developed. And a lot of times that's where the fruit is. That's where the opportunities lie.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I totally. That's a great point. I think that right now, 5 years ago, the organic food industry was still a niche industry, actually. Overall, by and large, and then because the big companies, they didn't take it seriously. They didn't see that its growth was actually going to continue, and so they didn't invest millions of dollars in trying to change their entire quality control processes and the way that they source and the ingredients that they source simply for that. And so it was a great opportunity to actually, get in an industry that was growing, had low barriers to entry because it wasn't so developed yet. But also challenging. I mean, so no, great examples. And some other ones another one I can think of is a solid example of a niche that really has made a company really successful. Just the fact that they hit the niche right is Stacy's pita chips. Basically creating a good tasting pita chip that didn't exist back about 10 or 15 years ago. And I know an old timer food vet from Medellin told me about how he used to distribute Stacy's pita chips back in the day in New England, and how they just had such a good recipe, and everyone loved them so much that, he was just being a distributor for Stacy's pita chips, because of the fact that there was just no competition for a while, made him a six-figure salary, which is amazing. Just that one product alone that he worked with for a few years.
So maybe pita chips, so Stacy's pita chips, that's kind of an example of taking pita chips, which is more or less the same, and building a great brand around them.
Yeah, definitely. And doing them, and I guess there's a qualification there. Having something that's actually great tasting and also sticks within a category is like undeniable in many ways. Especially if it has any kind of health benefits or health claims. Pita chips now, I don't know what Stacy's does. I don't think that they're definitely not like supremely healthy, but they might not be fried in. They're baked. They're not fried, and so that's maybe one advantage to them. So take something that's always tasted poorly and figure out an amazing recipe, and it's not too hard in that respect. But also we need to kind of do some research before we look at niches, especially if we're looking forward to try to find a product to work with. How do you find? What does it take to figure out the next niche? You can stumble upon it just with good fortune, like many folks have done in the past with organic, as we said. And but how do you find a niche without the benefits of luck
or serendipity? Might be the word. Well, I think, we talked about goals and taste. It is important to have, a certain amount of passion. Obviously, that's not everything, right? But at least have an idea of things you're interested in. I mean, online research is huge. You can go to Amazon. There's plenty of smaller organic food stores online. You can look at press releases. Like Huffington Post has lots of columns on organic food, right? So online is a great way to start.
Definitely. And first of all, I think there are industry sources out there that basically like industry newsletters that you can kind of get a pulse on for different industries. For example, one is BevNet for beverages, that you can just get a newsletter, and basically, so it's important to kind of see, they kind of broadcast trends, basically because of the fact that they will tell you, here's a title: Coconut Water, Positioned to Rescue the Juice Industry. This is just from February 6th, a few days ago. Things like that, might get you on your track to looking more deeply into the fundamentals of product and how to source it, and, how to talk to some friends who might be able to help you and get you on your way. And then Amazon.com definitely helps. And, I think it needs to be said that you need to know how to look on Amazon, or you need to know how to break down prices on Amazon to understand if something is going to be profitable, no?
You're right. And so for Amazon, I'm going to link up to the FBA revenue calculator. And basically what that does is you can enter in any product and find out exactly how much, if it's fulfilled by Amazon, how much they're paying Amazon and how much profit goes to them for every sale of the product.
Exactly. So no, that's amazing, right? Because you can basically just break out an equation that tells you that shipping and pick and pack and Amazon's commission costs this much, and so if you deliver, if you're able to deliver into Amazon's hands a product that costs X amount of dollars, you'll figure out how much you're going to be able to make off of that.
Right on. And, from online research, right, there's always the, I want to say true and tested. I don't know, like the tried and tested formula, right? Just going into stores, going into groceries, going into markets, right? Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, the farmer's market, and just taking a look at what's out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should definitely, we'll have episodes on Whole Foods in the future for sure. Because Whole Foods is such a big kind of bullseye for many folks that span the gamut of the industry, from food and beverage on the side of importing, making things at home even, and then branching out to farmers markets and being picked up to just large companies that are doing a new private label, or that decide to get into a new niche for some reason. Whole Foods is a big gateway, and it's a big deal. And there's no better way to find out what is going on in Whole Foods than going there and asking questions to their team members. And reading a little bit online has definitely helped me, because you can kind of hear some stories, and we're going to have success stories of folks that have been able to make the jump to Whole Foods Regional or Whole Foods National, and how they did it. Because there's sort of a way to go about doing it, and there's a way for Whole Foods to like you if and there's a way for you to, and then once you get into Whole Foods, there's a way to be successful too, which Matt was getting at, which is people that get into Whole Foods, companies that get into Whole Foods, their founders are there all the time in the Whole Foods where they're in, to make sure their product is being displayed correctly, to make sure to be working on demos, all this sort of stuff. And if you run into people that are doing that, you can actually learn. If you run into founders at a Whole Foods that are actually doing that, you can actually learn and get into a local kind of a food entrepreneurship community, which is hugely important.
Right on. Yeah. And obviously, when you're traveling, you don't have to go to Whole Foods. You can go to all types of markets and organic stores and grocery stores and restaurants all over the world. So there's just an unlimited space to visit and find new foods. Now, I wanted to make sure, like, the research is cool, right? And you got to find something, that's going to work for your niche. You also want to think of related niche. What's the type of product that can be kind of spun off, right? Instead of Stacy's pita chips, maybe we'll have pita chips with organic yeast added to them or something, right? Just like Tom's have a spin-off to an already successful product, right? And on the Lifestyle Business Podcast, where some of our listeners come from, they always call it rip, pivot, and jam. Taking a established product and making a slight modification to it and creating a new niche.
Dude, I want to create the Add Yeast company, where we add yeast to every single product that exists in Whole Foods.
Yeah, well, I mean, Bob's Red Mill, the organic yeast, it tastes like cheese, and it has like tons and tons of E vitamins. I've added on to a lot of my food, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to link that up as well to the Bob's Red Mill.
Yeah, definitely.
Organic yeast.
Sorry for giving you smack about it. No,
it's all right.
Yeah, that's no, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think in the food industry functions very differently, and the food and beverage industry functions differently from the tech industry, in the sense that this kind of rapid progress and innovation that you see happening in the tech industry, which a lot of it, some of it's related to Moore's law, a lot of it's just related to just the fact that different business models become ripe for success at specific times. It's a little bit different in the food industry. I mean, there are innovations that happen like once every 5, 10, 15 years around packaging that make things viable. And so you want to just become conscious of those as well, and become conscious of, how can you combine things like finding a related niche, and then also jumping on or learning about something, doubling down on something you believe in. For example, like if you double down on Tetra Pak and you were a beverage maker 4 or 5 years ago, and you saw that Tetra Pak was something that really worked in terms of creating a Tetra Pak is a type of packaging that leads to an aseptic seal and leads to long shelf life without too much of a compromise on taste for different products like coconut water. So you see the advent of coconut water in the United States of America is largely due to Tetra Pak. It's more innovation in Tetra Pak than coconut water. And Tetra Pak, the insides is kind of like there's kind of like there's a separate, there's basically there's a material that's kind of like a patented like metallic metal and also like metal and plastic bind or barrier. Actually, barrier is a better word, that protects coconut water from degrading. And so if you knew about that, and if you knew about that 5-7 years out and you were paying attention to things, you could definitely you've seen the coconut water industry go from pure coconut water to pineapple coconut to strawberry pineapple coconut to now chocolate coconut water to coconut water and teas and things like that. So it's fascinating, man. And there's always like this add another ingredient type of innovation to it, and you see that actually in industry studies a lot of times that works. It works in terms of what do I mean? It works in terms of the highest growth categories or categories that have combinations of new ingredients and that are also trying to pull on a different lever of a consumer buying it, of a consumer buying the product.
Okay, so we've gone over some of the fun stuff, right? Well, okay, so I'm trying to see what your speech was kind of like about, like be aware of developments in the industry. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna start over. All right, so we've gone over like the fun stuff, trying, tasting, looking around, visiting, traveling, and Danny's also mentioned how you have to be aware of an evolving industry, whether it's packaging or logistics, whatever it is, right, to get those ideas. But you can't ignore some of the arduous tasks that are inevitable in the food industry, like logistics, right? Do you need permits? How long is the shelf life? How long are these products going to last, right? That's going to be one of the things. Once you find these great ideas, you're going to have to run them through and make sure they pass the logistics test, they pass the legality test, they pass the allergy test, whatever they are, to make sure that you can legally get it on the shelves and the logistics are not going to be overwhelming. That the logistics are not going to be overwhelming to you for the launch process.
Yes. Be clear about the pains of whatever niche it is you're selecting. By pains, I mean things like there are short-term expiration dates and short-term shelf lives for different juices that are fresh and unpasteurized. If you want to get into that, be aware of it. Be aware of the market that you want to get into. If you want to build a $100 million company while selling these types of unpasteurized juices, it's going to be very, very hard. And you're going to have to know and you're going to have to be prepared for it. So pick wisely and do your research wisely on things like shelf life, packaging and what packaging works for competitors' products, and know how easy it is to get that packaging, if it needs to be custom made. Basically, know and build up your product from the niche selection to what the product looks like on the shelf. And that way you'll be able to plan for these big issues. One great way to do that also, go to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's sells things cheap. If you can't sell things or get things on shelves cheaper than Trader Joe's, don't do it. Okay? It means you can sell at a higher price to retailers, and they'll resell at a higher price. So the final price to consumer at a Whole Foods is going to be higher than it is at Trader Joe's. But if you can't even compete with Trader Joe's, don't try it, I would say. That's my 2 cents.
Well, Danny, I'm going to challenge you on that because, usually Whole Foods has higher prices than Trader Joe's. So are you saying that if you can't compete, like you can't sell it to Whole Foods at the retail price of Trader Joe's?
Let me be clear. Let me be clear on it. Actually, if your own costs, whereby you're selling to a retailer, the cost of your selling to a retailer should be lower than the cost of Trader Joe's. Okay, how about that? If you have a comparable product with a comparable serving size, so let's say that because of the fact, and I say this only because long term, you are vulnerable to price decreases, or you're vulnerable to a lot of competition because of the fact that Trader Joe's is very liquid. You can go to Trader Joe's and clearly see like for example, coconut oil. You can go to Trader Joe's and clearly see the coconut oil is $6.99. You can see that in like Vitamin Shop, it's like $9.99 or $10.99. If your costs to production are between, I would say, $6 and $8, or let's say even $5, just be wary. If you're close to Trader Joe's in price that you're selling to the supermarkets, and Trader Joe's is charging that low price to the consumer, be careful.
Gotcha.
Does that make more sense? Whatever. So let me just give you one more example. And so if you have Good A, and Good A is on sale in Trader Joe's for $1, and your costs of production and your cost of production and distribution and everything to make a profit comes in at $1.10, and normally a retailer charges a markup whereby it'll be sold in stores for $2. You're vulnerable. That's all I mean to say. Yeah, you can go ahead and do it, and you can create a great brand around it and take advantage of different channels, but you're vulnerable to the next guy coming in and doing the same thing. Or who knows? Maybe Trader Joe's is going to want to create private brands that they only distribute in the Whole Foods, for example.
Gotcha. All right, Danny, and summing all this up, I know you have a buddy, or at least an acquaintance, who launched a brand of ketchup. How do you think he found this niche?
I can tell you. Well, all right. I won't tell you guys who the company is, but hope to have them on the show in the future for sure. But no, I've got a pretty good buddy who's been real good, real knowledgeable in the industry, and great help for me. And they launched. His company launched a gourmet ketchup, and they got into it actually really through just creating an amazing recipe, having their friends try it, and quitting their jobs as consultants after a while because they hated being consultants, and because they figured that they were just working on this product, and they figured how to take something that was they figured out how to basically get their first batch, their first like industrial batch up and into stores. They were another case of somebody who liked to cook and make sauces. And they happened to be at the right place in the sense they happened to think pretty creatively about what they wanted to do with the product, if it was the right time, if it was going to make some money, if it could be a company, and so they took something that was a cooking delight and made it into a company.
Okay, and do you think they did any research? I mean, they kind of ketchup. Go ahead.
And they definitely did research. Their biggest research. I mean, they did huge amounts of research around pricing because you have to have good pricing to make a profit and have good distribution. They did a lot of research around what was the right, around their ingredients, where they compromised on ingredients and not, around organic. If they used organic cane juice versus organic brown sugar or turbinado or whatever sugar, for example, that they decided to or have used. They're obviously very, very, very. They did their research on how to position themselves. I just got to say, it's just going to take an episode. It's going to take an episode for them to explain their story when they come on. That's all I got to say. I mean, around niche, I think that they figured out that their niche was basically they were up against the Heinz of the world. And they were a gourmet company, so be as different as possible because you're up against these huge Goliaths that suck. Not to libel or say anything bad, actually. So these huge Goliaths whose ingredients are not the best and healthiest. Where high fructose corn syrup reigns, they decided to do the opposite. So find what your product is, and then find the pains within the industry or the sub-industry. So ketchup that's way too sweet, so make it better in the way where you're satisfying the pains of the customers.
So guys, that was an overview of looking for a niche and some of the examples. A little housekeeping. I know we've heard it from friends, listeners. Our logo and our website, they suck. They're not very good right now. But as we're growing, we're up to 500 downloads. We will, by March 1st, we will at least have a new logo, and we also will be begin to refresh and upgrade the design to our website.
Yes, we're all about content at the Food Startups Podcast, and providing good content comes first. So providing good logos comes second. And so we, Matt and I are the design team for the logos pretty much. And so we've been working hard, and finally we've had a little time to take a step back, think about what we want our logo and our creative to look like, and bring it to you guys now that we're coming extra serious in for the podcast in 2014.
Right on. Well, we're going to link up to all of the companies we talked about, the 2 books we mentioned, and the Amazon FBA revenue calculator on our website, foodstartupspodcast.com.
Perfect. Yeah, Amazon, great resource. Trader Joe's, great resource. Really break things down, and I suggest do some reading on just how to select a niche, if it's a more general business book, or just looking specifically at what has worked for some others. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, got some value out of it, and have a great day.
Thanks so much for listening. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, find us online at foodstartupspodcast.com.